Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. We are ever so slightly inching closer to kickoff as less than 90 days remain between Purdue and Penn State meeting under those Thursday night lights at Ross-Ade Stadium. However, there is still plenty to talk about as we get ready for football season and look at some storylines periodically, monitor some news and notes on both sides of Purdue's revenue sports with football and men's basketball. And then, as always, the little thing called name, image, and likeness, or pay for play, however you like to phrase it. Look, it's not going anywhere, and Purdue isn't doing great in it right now. We are going to go deep into kind of where Purdue sits right now, looking ahead into the future. We had a listener submit a really good question about it, so we're going to dive deep into that. That's going to be at the end of the show, the very last thing. If you've got NIL fatigue, hey, I completely understand that. I think everyone does to some degree. So if that's not your thing, you have my permission to bow out early. But I'm excited for what we have to talk about for that. So if you're interested, stay tuned through it all. Lots to get to, though. Let's go ahead and jump right in. But hey, if you don't already, follow the show on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. A lot of stuff there. Anytime there's news, notes, stuff to talk about, we're always there. Subscribe to Boilers and Beyond. We are everywhere you get podcasts. Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever. We are there. And hey, if you don't mind, tell some people. Tell people about the show. We're here bringing you stuff all the time. Going to get back into our weekly episodes, hopefully in early July as we begin the countdown to kickoff, if not even sooner. Looking forward to that. But kickoff times were announced for 6 of Purdue's first 7 games. That came the Thursday before Memorial Day. One of my favorite days of the summer as it pertains to college football, because you see that week 1 schedule and you start to plan out what your TV routine's going to be. Purdue, hey, getting six kickoff times announced right away. Very solid. You've got Penn State at night for Florida Atlantic in week 4. That's going to be the first homecoming night game in Purdue history. Don't know why that's the homecoming game, but hey, I don't make those decisions. 3 road games, noon for Syracuse, Minnesota, and 3:30 at Wisconsin for the game that Purdue has really struggled to win recently, to say the least. Indiana State in week 2 getting the 4 o'clock slot. I wouldn't have minded if that was at noon so I could get home and get on with the rest of my day after that one. But, hey, nonetheless, always good to get some kickoff times up and running, get an idea of when Purdue's going to be playing, and help build enthusiasm. That night game for Florida Atlantic is going to be fun, even if it's not the highest level opponent. So got a lot to look forward to there. Purdue did receive some transfer portal commitments in the football side since we have last talked here on this show. Just this past Friday, Tom Dienhart from goldenblack.com broke the news that Iowa wide receiver and kickoff returner Charlie Jones is coming to Purdue. He's an immediate eligibility guy because he is a grad transfer. The grad transfers are allowed to enter the portal and be eligible whenever they want. I know, the rule's confusing. I don't make it. You can be sure of that. I don't make these rules, but he's eligible right away. And hey, first team All Big Ten last year as a return man. That's awesome. You look at that and think, can Purdue finally have a return game that moves the needle? Purdue has not had a good return man in some time, and Rondale Moore probably should have been that guy, but he never was. Never fully materialized as a returner. Just ask Nevada about that fumbled punt return in the third quarter there. But Purdue hasn't returned a kickoff for a touchdown since 2013. Haven't returned a punt for a touchdown since 2009. We'll see if Charlie Jones can put an end to those skids. he doesn't have a ton in terms of career receiving totals, but Spencer Petras was his quarterback also. And it's hard to do at Iowa when the tight end is getting a ton of targets. He had Brandon Smith and Amir Smith-Marset in front of him until this past year. So certainly we'll have more opportunity at Purdue. I love the idea of Purdue getting another option at receiver. You can never have enough of them. Just look at what happened down in the Music City Bowl last year. You can never have enough receivers in Jeff Brom's offense. And then a couple weeks ago, Purdue picked up Cole Brevard, a defensive line transfer from Penn State. He's going to have 3 or 4 years left, depending on the COVID year, I believe, if I'm doing the math right. But he's a Carmel kid. Mark Hagan continues to rebuild that Carmel connection that Purdue has really utilized with Mark Hagan and pretty much Mark Hagan only over the years. This guy was a 4-star recruit, though, highly touted out of high school. Didn't get on the field a whole lot at Penn State, so he's coming back home to Indiana. I don't know if he'll be an immediate impact guy, although I will say, in fairness, I said that about DeMar J. Lewis last year, and he came in and made an impact right away. So I will see what he does this year, but as you look in the long term, this is a really good pickup for Purdue. He's big-bodied, he's strong, he moves fairly well from what I understand, so that's always a plus. Again, just kind of like receivers, up on the trenches, you can never have enough guys. We've certainly seen it on the offensive line, and a big reason why Purdue's defense was improved last year was because of the defensive line being stronger than it had been in years past under Jeff Brom. I would think Purdue is probably done in the portal now, but I guess you never know. Something could come available that they like. I think you'd always take offensive line help, and I think you'd always take a running back, but for the most part, I would think that Purdue is pretty much done. I don't know where they're at in terms of scholarship count at this point. Again, I think they're at 85, if not a little bit over. Those things always have a way of working themselves out, so I wouldn't stress too much there. But I would think Purdue is going to be done in the portal for now. I wanted to talk today on the show. During these summer months, I try to pay close attention to the message boards and see what folks are talking about. Help give me ideas. Help see what Purdue fans are talking about. Because, let's face it, the hard-hitting news isn't quite there. You got to go a little more in depth with no games to recap. And one of the conversations, and I was followed by an account on Twitter that also gave me this idea, is Aidan O'Connell for Heisman. It is something that Purdue fans have thrown around, I think sometimes a little bit lightly, not taken seriously, but saw some heated debate on message boards this week about whether this is a legitimate thing or not. And all I want to say is if you're one of those out there saying, yeah, Aidan O'Connell is going to win the Heisman, please be careful. The story of Aidan O'Connell is quite incredible. To go from a walk-on to a second-team All-Big Ten quarterback who maybe will get a chance to throw an NFL football for a summer or even longer after this year. I don't know. But to win the Heisman, boy, I don't know about that. So let's take a look at what it will take to win the Heisman. Based on recent history, Purdue has to go at bare minimum 9-3 for Aidan O'Connell to have a chance at winning the Heisman. The last Heisman winner, I believe, to play on a team that was worse than that was Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders won the Heisman on a 500 team. It didn't matter that he was that good. Aidan O'Connell isn't quite Barry Sanders. So, and even then, college football was a hell of a lot different at that point than it is now. Purdue's going to have to go at least 9-3. The Vegas odds have their win total at 7.5. We will certainly debate that more on the show as we get closer to the season, but those Vegas odds would indicate to you that 9-3 isn't all that likely for Purdue this year. Some have kind of looked at Purdue's schedule. Everyone knows Purdue's schedule is a little bit favorable this year. They don't draw Michigan. They don't draw Ohio State. Their crossovers aren't too bad. Penn State, Maryland, Indiana. The West is good, but not great. I disagree with the premise that Purdue's favorable schedule is a reason why O'Connell can win the Heisman. And I'll say this as to why. Where is Aidan O'Connell's moment on a national stage? Right now, week 1 is his moment on a national stage. Heismans are not won or lost in September. Just ask good old Kenny Hill from Texas A&M. He had that unbelievable season opener against South Carolina one year, and I think he was the backup holding the clipboard by October. It doesn't matter what stage you have in September. It is a November award. And Purdue's last 3 games of the season, at Illinois, Northwestern, and at Indiana. That's going to be BTN, 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 if I had to guess right now. And that isn't quite the national stage that you want to be on to win the Heisman. I don't think that the conversation can even start if Purdue isn't winning the West, because he would have to get to a Big Ten championship game and absolutely ball out against Ohio State. At least I presume Ohio State, given that they're over minus 200 to win the conference. They're going to win it probably, but he would need an unreal performance in Indianapolis to put himself in that conversation. And I think even if winning it for Purdue is difficult, and I say it's difficult to win it at that level because you saw what Kenny Pickett did last year. Like, he had 4,300 yards, 42 touchdowns, and 7 picks. He got the invite, but there wasn't anyone thinking that he had a chance of hearing his name called in New York. Everyone knew it was going to be Bryce Young. Why? It's Alabama. He's on a big stage every week. Kenny Pickett, heck, he won the ACC. Pitt won the ACC. They went 11-2, but it wasn't enough. And that's where it's a hard spot for O'Connell to begin with. But hey, let's pump the brakes on those types of expectations for Aidan O'Connell to begin with. Look, he was very good last year for Purdue, and I expect him to have a very good year this year. I think he is a very good quarterback. I think he's the best Purdue has had since Kyle Orton. But the end of last season didn't exactly put Aidan O'Connell across from really good defenses. You finished in November with Michigan State and Ohio State in the first 2 weeks in November. Michigan State had a bottom 5 pass defense in America. They were horrible. Aidan O'Connell shredded them to death. He had like 540 yards or something. He killed them. He was fantastic in that game. He put up good numbers, and he had a pretty good game against Ohio State, but that wasn't a very good Ohio State pass defense or defense in general. They fired their defensive coordinator in week 2. But also, Ohio State got out in front big in that game. I mean, what was it, 28-7, if I'm remembering right? I mean, Purdue was getting beat pretty good early. Tennessee, playing in the bowl game, they weren't a good pass defense either. They weren't good at all. And he did well against them, minus the interceptions. Northwestern and Indiana in the back half of November, they just weren't good teams. Indiana had completely quit. Northwestern wasn't all that good. Milton Wright tore them to pieces. So I just want to temper the expectations a little bit, because I don't think it's fair to Aidan O'Connell to sit here today and expect him to be a Heisman Trophy contending quarterback, or at least putting up Heisman caliber numbers. He was very good last year. But against the best defense he faced, boy, that Wisconsin game didn't go well. Whew, that was rough. Against another really good defense he faced, and I know it was in the rain, Minnesota was a tough game. That was tough sledding. Purdue did not look good. And when Purdue finally got the drive towards the end of the game, O'Connell got intercepted. We'll see how he does. You know, I'll also add that receiving core last year, you lost your top 3 receivers. David Bell, Milton Wright, Jackson Anthrop are all gone. Now you have to replace that with a number of guys, and you have good names. Brock Thompson had a good year. He was fantastic in the bowl game, but now he has to be the number 1 guy. That's a big adjustment. About Mershawn Rice and Abdur Rahman Yassin. They looked good last year, but they were also both shelved for the second half of the season due to injuries. Can they stay healthy? Speaking of healthy, how about TJ Sheffield? How's his recovery going? Because that injury in the Music City Bowl, that did not look good. That did not look fun at all. You've got a good tight end duo, Payne Durham, Garrett Miller. I think those guys are going to be really good, especially Durham could be an all Big Ten tight end. But they were really banged up by the end of last year. How healthy can they be? You know, Durham missed that Michigan State game. Can't remember if he played against Northwestern or not, but he was pretty banged up. Miller the same. He had to really gut it out at times last year. You've got some transfers in. Tyrone Tracy, Charlie Jones. Don't know about Elijah Canyon, but you have some transfers in. We'll see. There are a number of names that I think could be really good receivers for Purdue this year, but for the most part right now, it's unproven. Again, I predict O'Connell to be the second team all Big Ten quarterback again. I think he's that good. He's not C.J. Stroud, but he's a good quarterback. But putting his name in the Heisman talks right now is putting the cart well in front of the horse and maybe setting a bar too high for O'Connell to reach. I just don't. It wouldn't be fair to him if the conversation come December is how O'Connell had a nice enough year, but man, I thought he was going to be a Heisman contender. Because that just isn't fair for him at all. Changing notes here, something that I know folks are very, very passionate about. We're into June, and Purdue basketball still has not landed a transfer guard, even though they really do need one. Now, it most certainly isn't from lack of effort. Purdue went after 2 of the biggest fish in the sea, Nigel Pack, Tyrese Hunter. They didn't catch either of them. Nigel Pack with a high-profile $800,000 to go down to Miami, and Tyrese Hunter committed to Texas last week. Look, there are still a ton of names in the portal, but it is very obvious right now as we sit here in early June that the name, image, and likeness climate is working very heavily against Purdue in here. And again, we'll talk about NIL at the end of this episode, but it's very clear that this issue is really hurting Purdue right now because they're going after really good players. They have an easy sell of playing time, but they're not in a position where they can fork over cash. I think that's really hurting Purdue here. I absolutely think Purdue needs to add someone. I am as big of a Braden Smith fan and as big of a Braden Smith believer as anyone you'll find, but expecting him to go in there and play 30 minutes a game as a true freshman in the Big Ten, that's a lot to ask. That's a heck of a lot to ask. I don't want that to happen because I think you're putting him in a really tough spot. It's going to be a younger, less experienced team to begin with. So Purdue's going to have to keep going after guards. Ultimately, there's a lot of names out there. I think they'll end up with one, but man, it's a struggle for Purdue right now. And I think the hard part is It's a much bigger issue than just trying to go out and recruit players. The folks that are talking about Purdue basketball like it's a sinking ship, though, probably are a little bit ahead of themselves. This is still one of the most stable programs in America. I don't know what name, image, and likeness will change long term, but Purdue's in a pretty good spot. It could be a heck of a lot worse, and we'll see as we move forward who Purdue adds and how this season's outlook changes, but it should be a pretty weak Big Ten. I think if Purdue's going to have maybe not a down year, maybe it is a down year, I don't know, but not as great of a year, this looks like it might be the year to do it. Last time on the show, we talked quite a bit about Jeff Brom's comments about the Louisville job. And boy, this past week, Scott Satterfield, the head coach at Louisville now, he gave his comments. And the drama continues. It's not stopping, folks. But Scott Satterfield was asked about what Jeff Brom had said about Louisville. And here's his quote. "I don't worry about it. He's got a job, I've got a job. For me, I don't worry about any outside noise, distractions, because that's what they are. Our job is to wake up and do the best job we can possibly do with our team. I owe it to everybody in this building, the 115 players we have in the locker room, the staff we have running around this building, to do the best we can do every single day and put a product on the field that's going to go win championships. That's what we're here for. We go win championships, and we're going to keep this thing running for years to come. So he might have to wait a little bit more time before he decides to come back," end quote. Satterfield, a little fired up there. He doesn't want to lose that job anytime soon. Now, this comes on the heels of him landing a big-time 4-star receiver. Satterfield is a very good recruiter. He's recruited well there. Look, there's no finish sign to these theatrics and this conversation. Just know that. This isn't ending anytime soon. Up until the point when the season ends and we look at where Louisville is, if they won, they're either going to extend Satterfield, Louisville's going to love him, he'll get an extension, and this conversation will quiet down for a little bit. Or they could win, and Satterfield could say, "To hell with you guys. I'm out of here. I don't want to deal with this. Go get Brom. Go get someone you want." Or Louisville could have a poor year. The donors will get what they want. They're pretty busy trying to fire their new athletic director, or soon-to-be new athletic director already. So they're a fun crew, but, this isn't going to stop anytime soon, and only time will tell whether Jeff Brom ends up going back. But if you missed what we said, go check out the last episode. Talked about it quite a bit with Jeff Brom to Louisville. We're going to finish today with the NIL question that I discussed in the intro. Had a very good question from one of our listeners, and he said, in the current state of college basketball, how many years until Purdue falls into obscurity with all of these transfers and no NIL money? Look, this is the doomsday scenario question. This is a scary question. This is a difficult conversation to have because the answer is very unknown. To this point, and I say this as it's Sunday, June 5th, 2022, about 3:30 in the afternoon. Neither Mike Babinski nor Mitch Daniels have said anything remotely progressive on the NIL front to put Purdue in a better spot here. Mike Babinski has had some interviews, been quoted in articles by both goldenblack.com and the Journal and Courier. His stance seems to be wait it out. The stuff will regulate itself. The collectives will regulate themselves. We'll see how this goes. And a quote he had in an article this week with Mike Carmen from the Journal and Courier was, what I see is the shiny new toy, and everybody is burning white hot at the moment. That can't sustain itself over the long haul. And Mitch Daniels wrote a op-ed into the Washington Post a couple weeks ago where he talked about how great the Purdue club men's basketball team was with their national championship win, and how, I guess, refreshing it was for him to see players who weren't claiming to be mistreated or overworked, just regular students playing basketball to have fun. I don't know why that article was necessary, but that certainly didn't help Purdue. And if those guys aren't bored, starting with Mitch Daniels and then down to Mike Babinski, then you're wasting breath if you're looking at Jeff Brom or Matt Painter and questioning what happens on the recruiting trail or why they aren't getting guys. Because if administration isn't in on playing this NIL game, then there's nothing those coaches can do. They have bosses too. And it goes to administration because to a certain degree, you are asking them to bend NCAA rules if they're going to get involved with this collective business and get involved with more or less pay for play. That's what it is. But that's what a lot of schools are doing right now. Not all of them. That's what a lot of schools are doing. And until the NCAA does something and puts guardrails in place about this, and it seems like they keep looking to Congress to do it, that's going to take forever, then you're going to see more of this wild, wild west stuff continue until either the money dries up, which seems to be Mike Babinski's bet, or either things are legislated in through Congress or through the NCAA where there are rules around this stuff. I will say, in fairness, Mike Babinski has said that Purdue has talked to a couple of collectives and that they're hoping to get something going. I don't know how big name, image, and likeness is going to get at Purdue to begin with. You have to remember, some of these schools, you see like at Miami, the John Ruiz dude. I'm not all that familiar with South Florida, but from the sounds of it, he's the biggest big shot attorney down there, and he's got all the money in the world. Now, $800,000's probably nothing to him then. And you look at some of the schools, Tennessee, giving $8 million to Nico Iamaleava in the 23 football recruiting class. Tennessee's got one massive fan base. That's not what Purdue has. It's not like Ohio State, where every breathing soul in Ohio is a Buckeye fan. Most Purdue fans went to Purdue. Most Purdue fans are, if they didn't go to Purdue, they're very closely connected to Purdue. That kind of limits the size of your donor pool. Now, Purdue does have a pretty wealthy alumni base, but how much are fans going to want to throw money at recruiting players that may or may not work? I mean, if you're recruiting kids out of high school and you're giving money to them, I ask you to go look over at 24/7 and look up Purdue football all-time recruiting. You can see some of the biggest names Purdue's ever recruited, and if you're giving kids money, you better hope they work out. And not all of them are going to work out. For every guy like George Karlaftis that was highly recruited and came in and did great, you've got a Doug Van Dyke who never made it to campus. For every David Bell, you've got a Selwyn Lyman. So it's an aggressive game. It'll be interesting to see where things go. The $1 million question is this here to stay? And I see a way it stays as uncontrolled as it is now, and I see a way that it won't stay. Why will it stay? Simple. Legality. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 in the Alston case regarding NIL rights for players, saying that they have to be able to profit off their name, image, and likeness. This is flat out illegal in every other business format. It's going to be illegal here. Brett Kavanaugh, in his concurring opinion, note not the majority, he said, heck, fire an amateurism suit at us. We'll play that game too. Why won't it stay, though? The coaches don't like this, especially down in the SEC, and they're the ones who have the most power. Just remember that. And a lot of people are getting burnt out with name, image, and likeness stuff already, and it hasn't even been legal for a year yet. If this is something that would actually cut interest, cut that revenue generated by college athletics, they'll find ways to make sure that revenue gets as high as it can. And if folks stop getting interested because of the NIL stuff, or it becomes something that dominates college athletics, they'll find ways to make sure that interest comes back. To answer the question of how obscure Purdue would become, look, Purdue isn't the only Power 5 school that doesn't have anything going for it with NIL right now. Iowa doesn't. I know that one. It's hard to compare to Northwestern. You don't want to do that, but Northwestern doesn't. I haven't heard much out of Minneapolis or Madison on the NIL front. So you're not the only one, and you're certainly not the only one in the Big Ten West. Now, the two closest geographic schools to you, Illinois and Indiana, yeah, they got NIL money. They got no problem. It sounds like Trace Jackson Davis got a pretty substantial amount to go back to Indiana. So the question of this is really how long until something changes, because you always hear, is there going to be a split where the top 20 or 30 programs split off from the rest of the Power 5? If that were to happen, Purdue's going to be on the wrong side of that cut, because Purdue is not the money machine. Purdue is not the national title contender that some of these programs are, and they don't have the money throwing around that an Ohio State, that an Alabama, that a Southern Cal, that a North Carolina does. So I think more than anything, though, and why it's really frustrating and disappointing, is because the timing is just so poor. Purdue had finally caught up in terms of pre-NIL college athletics. Mike Babinski walked into a pretty tough situation. Even more so, Mitch Daniels walked into a tough situation because President Cordova had no interest in athletics. The athletic environment was, A, very dated in terms of facilities, and B, Purdue was struggling a little bit. You know, they weren't willing to get Matt Painter enough money. That changed. Mike Babinski came in and really prioritized football. Under Mitch Daniels, they got the Kozich Football Performance Complex rolling. Mike Babinski came in, has completely renovated Ross-Ade. Purdue did a really good job at building up the athletic department, building up the facilities, making themselves competitive at a high level. Now, name, image, and likeness is in play. That's not somewhere where Purdue is going to be thriving, at least as of right now with the way things stand. Could things change? Hopefully. Will they change? I hope so, because I'm sick of NIL just as much as you are. But at the end of the day, until things do change, Purdue's going to have to find a way to just become a little bit more competitive here. Finally, on the way out, keep your eyes open for football commitments. It is Saturday or Sunday afternoon here. Purdue got a commitment from Owen Davis this morning. I think sounds like there's more coming. We will see what goes on there, but it's June. Things get hot around this time. Purdue just had their first weekend of official visits. There will be more coming. They had Ricky Collins in this weekend. That's a big one. They're going to have their hands full trying to keep him committed, but if they do, that's a game changer. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for spending time with me. We'll be back here soon, probably a week or two, to talk all things Purdue sports as we continue the countdown to kickoff. Follow the show on Twitter @BoilersBeyond. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Anything you want me to discuss on the show, send me a message on Twitter, tweet at me, do whatever you need to do, and let me know what you want me to discuss. Until next time, take care, folks.